Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live at the Waterhole. I'm so excited to spend this Saturday afternoon with all of you, and I'm very pleased that you have decided to spend it with us here at Wild Earth, and particularly with all the animals we get to see across the different cameras. We're starting off here at Naledi Dam, and I couldn't be happier. We're starting off with elephants. It's me, Trishala, by the way. I'll be your guide, your what I like to say flight attendant through the afternoon for the next 2 hours. And I say flight attendant because my aim is for you to enjoy Live at the Waterhole, enjoy the sights and the sounds, and to also answer any questions that you may have, because as usual, we're live and interactive. You can send through questions, comments. We'd love to hear from you. Oh, look at this Eddie coming so close. This is one thing that I really love about the Naledi Dam camera. So you can really get up close and personal with the elephants. Now I like to, I guess much like a flight, I like to relax, take it easy, really immerse myself in what's happening on the cameras, really pay attention to things that maybe when we're guiding and we're in the field, we aren't able to do as well, or we do differently, I should say. And that's because when you're in the field, you're considering your position of the vehicle, you're considering safety, movement. And with the cameras, you don't have to think about any of that. And you can really focus in on watching other little details. Now you can see that everyone is kind of bunched around the well where there's nice fresh water, and this little one is trying to get in there too. But you're really going to have to push your way through. And even if you do, you're not going to be able to reach the well. But I have seen little calves like this making their way to the well, and then they can just kind of get their trunks, the tip of their trunks, to touch the water. Not nearly enough to actually suck any water up, but it is adorable. Yes, you push your way through. Ooh, elephant calves are just born with sass. They are so sassy, so much confidence, but it kind of appears in spurts. Other times they want to be right next to mum. Nola, I agree with you. You say this is the best way to relax. It really is. And after I go through a few more comments, we're going to take a moment to just be quiet and listen. For me, this is also an opportunity to relax. An opportunity to just carve out this slice of time to appreciate the wonders of the African bush. Catherine, you say good day. Good day, Catherine. Thank you for joining us. And Mercedes Beanie, you say greetings, Wild Earth crew and chatters. Happy Saturday, and it's good to hear me again. It's good to be on board with all of you again. Sometimes things get really busy, and I don't get to do Live at the Waterhole very often. Sometimes I get to, but recently not very much. And that's why I love being on site. Because when you're on site with Wild Earth, you can't do anything else, and it really helps you to get stuck right in. So I am very thankful for these couple hours spent with you and with all these wonderful animals. So how about we jump right in, settle into Live at the Waterhole, adopting the pace of nature, and let's listen to these sounds. lots of interesting things going on here at Naledi Dam, and we'll chat about them in a moment. But I see that one of the individuals are right in the dam now, and I think it's going to get splashy and noisy, and I can't let you miss out on that. So that's really interesting. I just wanted to wait until all of the splashing was kind of over before we started to chat again. But that elephant bull that was drinking at the well and then moved across the dam over to the other side, he seems to be causing a little bit of trouble. Everyone's handling it very, very well. But he's been testing the uh, the urine, well, not quite the urine, but just the moisture around the elephants or around their um, kind of between their legs. So that's not always urine. Sometimes it can be sweat or other bodily fluids that he's testing as he goes along. And by doing that, he's checking to see which one of the cows are receptive to mating, which ones are ovulating at the moment. The issue is that he's kind of doing it to even the very young elephants, not the tiny calves like the one that's next to the well at the moment, but to the slightly older ones too. Calves that look, or youngsters, I should say, that look adolescent, maybe even between like 8 and 10 years old. He's testing all of them. And now it looks like he's over on the other side with some more young cows and is carefully going through. But he hasn't caused any significant trouble just yet. He's not being aggressive about it. He's just going around and testing them. So you may be familiar with the phlegm and grimace, which is something that we see very obviously in, like in cats. In primates, it's really easy to see because they curl the upper lip and show or bare their teeth. And by doing that, they let air and airborne moisture particles, like pheromones, come into their mouths. And that allows those particles to reach the vomeronasal organ. And the vomeronasal organ is situated kind of like on the palate of an animal's mouth. And it has tiny, tiny little tubes in it. And those tiny tubes are also filled with liquid, but more like a gel sort of liquid. And so what happens is those tiny airborne particles that are carrying information about that animal, it could tell whether the animal is ovulating, it could tell if it's stressed. Those particles, they enter those tubes in the vomeronasal organ and they get amplified. So it makes it much easier for the animal to figure out what message is being carried by those particles. Now, with elephants, they can't really phlegm and grimace. They can't really lift their upper lip in the same way as other animals can. So instead, you see them touching their trunks to something that they want to, I suppose, examine, and then touching the tip of their trunk into their mouths. Oh, we've got an ellie very close to us now. Oh my goodness, look at those wrinkles. Oh, isn't it mesmerizing with the pace of the movement of this camera as well? I'm not sure why I was holding my breath as as we moved across. It's just so magnificent. Now, there were a couple other things that I noticed while we were sitting and watching the elephants enjoy themselves here at Naledi Dam. One I've seen very often, but I never really thought about. And hopefully we'll get to see it again. It was a youngster who was drinking and then picked up its trunk, put it on the top of its head, and then pulled on either one of the ears over the top of it. And when I saw it, I thought, I've seen this a lot. And then it just sort of clicked in my head. If it's hot, and it really is heating up in the Lowveld at the moment, I mean, it's been heating up for a while, but it is hot up there. I mean, it's even really hot here in Johannesburg at the moment. But if you have a nice wet hand, for example, and your shoulders are super warm because the sun is hitting on your shoulders, it feels nice to be able to take your cool hand or your wet hand and just rub your shoulders, doesn't it? So I wonder if in doing that, in kind of pulling across the top of the ears with the wet trunk, it just offers a little bit of relief. Oh, there we go. A little bit of chasing at the back there. It's still that elephant bull. There's a couple of bulls around here. Each one looking for an opportunity to sire the next generation of calves. Oh, and someone's back in the water. Our view is being blocked. Happily, though. Julia, you are absolutely right. It is amazing. And that's why I love to do this. And it really is one of the things that if you go into a wild space and you have the opportunity to just sit at a waterhole, like Julia says, it's amazing how much you can observe and interpret from just sitting at a waterhole. So if you have the opportunity to take a few moments of peace at a waterhole, sit for an hour to see how much you can afford to sit at a waterhole for, do it. Because the type of experience and the types of observations that you can make are different to what you could do during a game drive. Now, Hudson, you say shame. You feel for the little calf. If it can't reach the water in this well, Will its mother help? I have not ever seen mothers help calves at this well. Now, having a well like this next to a dam is not something that's very common. So, ordinarily, if this well wasn't here, the elephants would just be drinking at the dam. But the majority of the time, the really tiny calves, like the one that we saw way at the beginning here at Naledi Dam, though they might not be able to reach the water, they really aren't as they really haven't formed preferences at that point. So any water is going to be good. But what they're doing is following what the adults are doing. So it's seeing adults drink at the well, and mom's drinking at the well, so I'm going to go try drink at the well. But I've very often seen here at Naledi Dam when little ones can't reach where mum can, it kind of just goes to the dam if it really wants to have a drink. And the really young ones that can't reach the well, their trunks are not going to be very useful. They're still trying to get control of that trunk. But you might also notice that there's one side, the left side of the well, as we're watching, that is lower, the ground is lower than the right side. Now, I haven't seen this, but maybe if the calf is not very young and has good control of its trunk, perhaps she could shuffle her calf to the right side where the ground is a little higher. I think one of the cutest things I've seen was a really tiny calf who could just get the tip of its trunk into the well here, but really didn't have enough control to suck up water. So it just kind of like, when you put your feet in the pool and you just wiggle them, it was just wiggling its trunk in the water. Like, hey, I'm here. I'm like mum. I'm drinking where all the adults are drinking. It was very, very sweet. Now, the other thing is, depending on how many animals have come to use the well, or how many elephants specifically, that would change the level of the water. So if it's just a mum and calf that's come along, the calf is far more likely to be able to reach the water because the water is nice and high. Now, as we were sitting here, we saw that some of the elephants were not only drinking from the well, but were also splashing themselves with water. So the level in that well is probably pretty low, which is going to make it even more difficult for the calves. But luckily, there are other options, albeit not as clean and fresh, especially if your herd mates have been splashing about like this in it. But it is another option for water. Anyway, let's have a listen to this guy. Or gal, can't tell yet. Giving itself a good splash, and we see some others coming down too. Gina, I hear you. I feel the exact same way. Gina in the UK says, "Gosh, I could stay here all day." I know, so could I. And yes, we do have a variety of other cameras that we can visit, but it seems to be elephants everywhere today, and we will pay the others a visit too. But I really could stay here the whole day. There's so much going on. Not only do we have a breeding herd that's come through, but we also have those elephant bulls. And that always makes for exciting viewing. At the moment, it seems pretty peaceful. I think what we're looking at right now is a good example of what we were talking about earlier in terms of the level of the water in the well and how that can be difficult for younger calves. But luckily, if you're tall enough, it doesn't matter how much water is left in the well, you can still get to the bottom. And Joy in Hong Kong is in the house too. Hi, Joy in Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us. Joy, I must tell you something. I was very lucky to meet Joy a couple years ago now at Juma when we had the Wild Earth expeditions and we had wonderful people coming down, Wild Earth fans, to come and visit us and spend some time looking for animals and meeting the characters and meeting all of us. And so, Joy, I had moved from my house in Cape Town and am now in Johannesburg. So while I was packing up, I found two of the poems that you gave to me that day. And when I saw your name now, I thought, I have to let Joy know. So I'm very glad that you're able to join us for Live at the Waterhole. And I hope that you'll even jump on later for On Safari and for the Sunset Safari. I know, I know. I could stay here all day, like we've been saying. But some buffalo have come through to King's Camp in the Timbavati, and I do love that camera because it gives us a spectacular view of the animals, and it is beautiful. So let's head over to King's Camp. Oh, there we go. Just enjoying themselves. Can you imagine a hot day? Sun is beating down. There's barely any shade just yet because the leaves are still coming in. All those dry plants are soon going to be verdant and lush. But for now, there's little shade. But at least you can find some cool water. Not a lot of it. Still waiting for our first rains. But those larger dams, and especially the little pans that are near lodges, they're still going to have water, just like this one here at King's Camp. So it really offers so many animals utter relief, particularly these big, large, dense herbivores. carrying so much muscle, so much weight. Now, each time that there's more weight added to a living thing, your processes, your internal metabolic processes, they're increasing. And if they're increasing, it means that the heat in your body is increasing. Carrying a lot of weight around, the heat and the sun beating down on you too. Gosh, this whole speech makes me want to jump in the pool, honestly. Makes me feel so good for them. Nice one, Zoomy. You could see that the buffaloes were struggling to get into focus there, but the Zoomy did it. Sometimes it can be really difficult, especially when there's a lot of distance. So there's there are a line of trees in the back and the ground. Sometimes the camera wants to focus on that. But well done, Zoomy. You got a nice, crisp, and clear picture of the buffaloes for us. Oh, stunning. And Nikki, you say you can't remember the last time you saw buffaloes in live at the waterhole. You know, I think you're right. It's been a while since I've seen buffaloes in live at the waterhole too. Oh, we got some noisy red bull oxpeckers. Nice. Oh, and look at this wiggling nose. So sweet. I wonder if wiggling the nose might have something to do with cooling down as well. Buffaloes have an excellent sense of smell, particularly to be able to sniff out water, because they are so heavily water reliant. But we also know that the nasal passages are really effective at cooling down the blood that's circulating through your body and through those nasal passages. So I wonder if wiggling it around a little bit helps at all with distributing the mucus in those areas, because the cooling happens as a result of the mucus. Whatever it is, I think we can all agree that it's downright cute. Penelope Kenyon, you say postcard perfect. Isn't it just? Can't you imagine a postcard with this very image available at curio shops, at game reserves? I definitely can. Hi, Silas. You'd like to know, do buffaloes ever dig for water like elephants do? No, I haven't seen or come across any information with regards to them digging for water. Definitely, they don't have the correct equipment to be able to do that. Sometimes you will see them kind of, I think you can call it dig, because they are using their horns to dig the ground, but very, very shallow. very, very shallowly. And that's because that digging, which I mean, I'm using the word loosely here, but it's more to get mud onto that boss, onto the horns, than it is to make groundwater available to them. So, other than that, they don't have any other equipment that could potentially dig. Their hooves are not really made for digging. I wonder who it is that made them jump up like that. Could there be an elephant on the side? Oh, it was a sneaky hammerkop. I love how the buffalo at the end there is just staring down the hammerkop like, did you seriously just make me get up? Now the buffalo looks at us like, are you seriously commenting this? Yes, I am. So, no, Silas. I haven't come across in literature or in experience buffaloes digging for water. But buffaloes travel in large herds and can travel really vast distances in search of water. So perhaps things have worked out well enough for them to not have to develop techniques to dig to get groundwater in the ways that elephants sometimes do. Hi, Jive Bunny. It's lovely to hear your name and thank you for joining us. You say that today your granddaughter Kalia is with you. Hello, I hope that you're really enjoying life at the waterhole and please remind your grandmother to send through any questions that you have because that's what I'm here for. And if you want to just enjoy the cool sounds of the animals, you're welcome to do that too. But please make sure you send any questions that you like through. Now, Caden, you would like to know, do buffaloes have any way of carrying water with them during very dry seasons? No, they don't. They don't. They're not able to store water um, in any way, really, apart from internally, and in the same way that you and I, quote unquote, store water by keeping it in our body after drinking it. But other than that, they don't have a way to store water. In fact, very few animals do to any significant extent. Sand grouse, for example, probably a really nice example of that because they can fluff out the feathers in their belly area and that can hold water that they can take back to their nest. Bursa sacs in tortoises is another good example of that. Probably the best example when it comes to storing actual water as opposed to storing water in the form, or energy, I should say, in the form of fats and things like that, like you see with camels. But storing just as in like literally having a water bottle with them, a bursa sac found in tortoises is probably the best example of that. But in a way, one of the things that you start to really not just learn, but kind of sits and you start to embody this understanding of nature when you spend a lot of time in it, whether as a guide, whether as a field scientist, whatever it is. One of the things you really start to appreciate, which perhaps I didn't initially, before I started to, like, maybe 15 years, maybe I didn't appreciate what I'm about to tell you as much as I do now. But cycles in environments, in climatic conditions, in disease, cycles in those things in the natural world, in a natural setting or a space, are really important of the ecosystem. When there is a really tough drought, those animals that can survive due to perhaps some strange mutation that allowed a certain buffalo to have a hole in its horn that collected water, whatever it is, that's quite obscure, but animals that have mutations, animals that had a better strategy, learned strategy. It's events like this, whether it's drought, whether it's flood, but changes in their natural environment that allow for those characteristics to come out. Um, and it's on a larger scale, a very important part of population control as well. And I really didn't appreciate that before I started to spend the majority of my life out in wild spaces. All these things, however devastating they may appear to us, these natural events, however devastating they may appear, are important parts of maintaining healthy populations, maintaining genetic variety, maintaining all those things that are really important to ecosystems that we can't see. Absolutely, Nola. There are so many things that we don't fully understand. So many things. And that's kind of why I love learning about it. Sometimes you can learn, and the steps take you um, further and further and further away from what you can see and more into chemistry or even into physics when you think about the way that animals move, their center of gravity, all those kinds of things. And it kind of pulls you far away from what you see when you're out in the wild. But they are so important still. And when you think about how much there is that we already know, but is not common knowledge, as in us as humans. So there are scientists who specifically may study nasal passages in buffalo, and they'll have extensive knowledge on that specific thing. And there's so much of that known world that is out there that we can learn about, but you need a lot of time and patience to do that. So there's all of those things that we could learn. The information is out there. And then beyond that, there's so much more that we don't know a thing about that we also have the potential to learn about in the future. It looks like it's time for a little bit of ruminating for the buffaloes. You can see that the mouths are moving. They've had a nice soak, nice and cool. And now it's time to sit and enjoy that cud. But how about we head over to Tembe and just say hello to the camera then. We've also got some elephants that look like they might be heading into the water soon. Or they're just really smart and are hanging out under some shade, which is a great option. Here at Tembe in northern KwaZulu-Natal, it is almost always lush like this, and there's always the opportunity to find a little bit of shade. Now, Lady Macbeth, yes, you're absolutely right. I actually forgot about that. Elephants can store water, even though a tiny, well, no, it's not a tiny bit actually. It's about 4 liters or so, or about a gallon of water that can be stored in their pharyngeal pouch. But the pharyngeal pouch, in and of itself, is a little bit of a mystery. Trying to figure out how it functions, what its function is, how an elephant is able to retrieve clear water from it when one would imagine that food stuff would go into it as well. But it seems that so the pharyngeal pouch is a little pouch that's located around the well, in their neck, kind of where their neck joins their heads. And it seems like they most often use that the water in it to cool themselves as opposed to drinking it. But that doesn't mean that in desperate times they wouldn't drink it. But it is kind of a little bit of a mystery trying to figure out what the exact purpose of the pharyngeal pouch is, how they manage to seal it off while they're eating, whether they replace the water, how often they replace the water. There was even one theory about the pharyngeal pouch that involved kind of siphoning water from their stomach and using the pharyngeal pouch as more of a receptacle, yeah, and keeping water there that was in excess in their stomachs. But I'm not sure how or whether I agree with that. Oh yes, what a great way to get an itch that is very difficult to get otherwise. Love seeing elephants being funny like that, especially when I'm in the midst of trying to explain a part of the anatomy that we can't really explain just yet. I love that animals have a great way of pulling me out of my science mind, even though at the same time they're excellent at pulling me into it. But there you go. Pharyngeal pouch is also a way to store water. But exactly how, from where, when they use it, and why they use it, we are a little unsure. There is anecdotal evidence, mostly for the water in the pharyngeal pouch to be used to cool them down, as in to throw on top of them. But that was an excellent point, Lady Macbeth. Oh, Mindy Tillepow is here. Mindy says she's just popped in. And you're happy to hear that I'm on live at the waterhole. Well, I'm happy that you are here to join us, Mindy. And Catherine, just from the conversation we were having earlier about the many things we know and the things we don't know, and the things that we do know, but we don't know if we know it enough, like the pharyngeal pouch, you say that you think it's a good thing we don't know everything and never will. Yeah, um, I'm not sure it's a good or a bad thing. It just is because nothing on the planet could ever know everything. There's just so much to know. And I think of it more as interest and curiosity. And I love being curious about the natural world. Oh, and Catherine, that's really, really interesting. You say you've seen an elephant put her trunk into the mouth and then into a calf's mouth. So maybe she was taking hot water out of that pouch. Perhaps that if you did see transfer of water, which I'm assuming you did, because putting a trunk into another animal, another elephant's mouth, particularly between calves and cows or their mums, is a form of communication as well. Remember, we were speaking about the vomeronasal organ earlier and trying to detect different pheromones. Well, detecting what's going on with your mum or what's going on with your calf can also be done using the trunk and that vomeronasal organ. But I think, Catherine, and I'm assuming that you did see water. Um, I think that that would make sense because if there is water around, I would think that an elephant would want to replace the water in its pharyngeal pouch with fresh water, even if it's not particularly cold. At least it would be fresher than the water in the pharyngeal pouch that's been sitting there for who knows however many days. Callum, you say that these sounds are lovely. They really, really are. I was kind of pulled in, particularly to the sound of the southern boo boo that I could hear in the distance. And different, so southern boo boos are one of those birds that you see across South Africa and different parts of South Africa. I've seen them in Cape Town in my garden. I've seen them in the bush, plenty in the Lowveld, at Madikwe Game Reserve, at Amakala. They're all around, but they have different accents. I know it's kind of a strange thing, um, but they have different accents, different birds across different areas. And the sound of the southern boo boo that I could hear here at the Tembe camera, for me, is the sound of my childhood. Now, I was born and grew up till the age of about 12 in KwaZulu Natal, much more south of where Tembe Elephant Park is, but that is the sound of early mornings, getting ready for school. It's the sound, that particular accent of the southern boo boo. And these are wonderful things to notice as we move through the different camps. And we spoke a little bit earlier about how we're able to notice slightly different things. And sometimes you can be pulled into listening to the sound, and then you can only hear sounds, and then you kind of get pulled back into the visuals. Maybe then you start to notice the colors, not just the behaviors of the animals. There's so many wonderfully um, curiosity igniting things that go on during live at the waterhole. The only thing I wish we could do that we can't do is ignite your sense of smell. Not virtually, at least just yet. I suppose we at Wild Earth could make a little scratchbook. I think that would be quite fun. But for now, there's so many other things to ignite our senses during live at the waterhole. Mindy, you have a really interesting question, and Lady Macbeth has jumped in here too. So, Mindy was saying, on a day when the water is still, do I think that animals can see their reflection in the water? And Lady Macbeth jumped in here and said, if they can, very few, if any, would recognize their own reflection. I I tend to agree with Lady Macbeth, but I want to just talk about something, Mindy. Very, very rarely have I seen waterholes with like no movement at all. And I'm kind of thinking about if I had to look at my own reflection in a very still bowl of water, I'd be able to recognize myself. But if I put my head down and started to drink from that bowl of water, I wouldn't be able to recognize that it's a reflection of me in the water. So that would mean that an animal would have to stare at the water before it actually goes down to have a drink. And that doesn't happen often. So I think that if it could happen, if an animal was just staring at the water on a very, very still day when there was no movement, I think that they would be able to see that there is another animal there, but they'd have to give themselves that time. And most often, when animals come to the water, they're coming to the water with a purpose. And that purpose is to drink, which creates ripples, which then makes it more difficult to see. And then we have to think about the animal's ability to see well. So we have our three color cones, and we can see pretty well, particularly at close range. And so if we have to compare that to elephants that have two color cones, who really don't need to see better than they do, I don't know if they'd be able to recognize that. Now, this is all based on something, or at least when you sent this question through Mindy, I was thinking about the mirror test. And so if you're not sure what the mirror test is, it's a test that scientists have been using to try and figure out what level of self-awareness animals have. And in the mirror test, they would show an animal a mirror and they would be able to see their reflection. And by just seeing their reflection, not many animals were able to figure out that it was them. But by putting a dot on them and the animal kind of touching the dot, some animals were able to figure out that they were looking at their own reflection. And it's not something that happened instantaneously. It was something that took figuring out from the animals. And I think there was only one Asian elephant that passed that test. But again, that test is biased because it assumes that those animals that are tested rely heavily on their eyesight. And it's not just eyesight, it's not just about the clarity or just about the amount of colors they can see. It's also about, can they see polarized light? How bad is the glare? How good is their vision at close quarters? How good is their vision far away? There's a lot of different aspects. How good are their eyes at collecting light in the first place? So it's biased towards animals that are good in all those areas. And the animals that pass those tests, like I said, there was one Asian elephant. I think orcas have as well. Dolphins. I think the great apes also. And there might even have been a couple fish that were able to pass that test. But it's a really any test is a good test because it gives you information. But there are limitations to that information that, of course, we have to be aware of, and that's what being scientists is about. Being able to test things, collect information about it, and figure out how to make those tests more accurate to give better information. But I think that it's such a great discussion. Thinking about self-awareness in general. because we can only really think of it and test it within the our human structures. So it's almost an impossible thing to know. But it's a brilliant thing to kind of get your juices going, to start thinking. Oh, Joy in Hong Kong, you say you wonder if there could be a scent-based mirror, and what would that look like? Goodness, I have no idea. But I have heard, I mean, you know, dogs and cats are animals that we're all pretty used to. And I have heard of people, like, you know, stories amongst friends and family of dogs that would stare at their reflection in mirrors and glass. And one of the things that they would try to do is sniff at it. Because just because there is a picture of something in front of them doesn't mean it's that individual. And because we know that dogs so heavily rely on scent, maybe a scent-based mirror test would be a really interesting thing. But I don't know how that would work, Joy, because how would the animal know that the scent is coming from that reflection and not from themselves? But a very, very interesting thought. And Catherine, you say your brain sometimes creates those bush smells when you watch. Well, I'm really glad for that, because that's one thing that I wish I could have you experience, because the bush smells are really, really special. And Cat Fan, you say this is your favorite camera location. I can tell why. It is stunning. It's always nice and green. It makes me feel like it's an animal paradise here at Tembe. And I think I have a little bit of a soft spot for KZN. Oh, Penelope Canyon, you say you're from Reservoir Hills initially. I'll tell you a secret, Penelope. I was born in Reservoir Hills, and I lived there till I was 12 years old. But now you are further north in Salt Rock. A beautiful place, still a little bit far from Tembe Elephant Park, but significantly closer than Reservoir Hills. Elephants all around. We're going to head over to Tau now in Madikwe Game Reserve. A little bit of a different environment. Definitely not as lush as here in KZN, but it's got a beautiful character of its own. But we're going to go see an elephant calf. Let's head over. Oh. Hello, little baby. Goodness me, you've had a lot of fun in the mud, haven't you? And now we are just getting curious. Let's take a moment to just watch what this Ellie does, and then we can get back to those amazing discussions we've been having, by the way. Thank you, everyone. Keep them coming through. Send through those questions. Send through those comments. It's been really lovely to chat to all of you today. I think that that was a combination of a little self enrichment, some curiosity, and perhaps just a tiny bit of thinking there might be some food down there. This calf almost reminds me of a little toddler that's in a garden and is stopping at every little thing, taking it easy, completely absorbed in their senses. What do I see? What do I smell? What do I feel? And you know, we don't often see calves moving so calmly, particularly away from the rest of the herd, and the herd must be close by. But this calf is just extra chilled. Mindy, I agree with you. That's one little happy camper. So happy that I'm just chilled out. I would love to see where the rest of your family is. There we go. I love how it's just lifted up its trunk like, hey, I was just securing the area. It's all good. You can come through, although this looks like a bachelor herd. Where's your mum? Hopefully she's gonna be close by too. But look how relaxed those elephant bulls were as they went past the calf, and how relaxed the calf is too. Very often when we experience elephant bulls around calves, it can be quite a, a little bit of a tense situation, because we know that most of the time elephant bulls want to find females to mate with, and those females that smell particularly like they're ready to mate may also still carry the scent of having recently given birth, or this postpartum scent. And so it feels like it's a little chaotic. But this was very chilled. Kind of looked a little lonely when we were zoomed out and you could see the expansive area around the Tau Dam, and no other mama elephants in sight. Oh no. If there's one thing that I know elephant mums are great at, it's being able to relocate their youngsters. And one thing that youngsters are great at is being able to find their mums. Everyone, I think we are now all invested in this little calf's journey. Where are you going? Where is your herd? We are all invested. This calf is just so chill though. It's like, yeah, I know where I'm going. I think that if this calf was panicked, certainly the body language would be very different. The pace at which it's walking would be very different. And also, when those other elephants, those elephant bulls came past, this little calf would have reacted to them. But he just seems so relaxed. And that's not your herd, but hey, why not go over and just ask them where your mum is? That's helpful. Paul Rizzo, you say, poor boy, he looks all alone out there and so vulnerable. He does look very vulnerable, especially when, we had the really wide view of him. He looked very vulnerable. But his body language is just not showing any kind of panic. Clearly he's just been in the water, and if he's just been in the water, he would be with his herd. Little youngsters, they need to feel comfortable to really get into the water. To drink, it's fine. They can drink even if they are a little bit anxious or panicked. These are, of course, human words that I'm using to describe what I see. But for him to have gotten pretty much whole body in the water besides the top of his back, his head must have been close by. Exactly. Jordan, who's in our director's seat this afternoon, says it reminds her of getting lost in the mall as a child. Yes, definitely. And not being brave enough to ask the people that come past you if they've seen your mum, so you just let them go and you keep on walking. Thank you, Zumi. Zumi has given us a little more information. So the Zumi said that before we came here to Tao, when we were still at Tembe, there was a mum and an older calf around. Oh no, is this your mum on the left here? And you're just wandering through. Well, we'll see. But he was definitely with his family, at least his immediate family, his mum and potentially an older sibling. I love how this elephant on the left there, if that is mum, is just staring at the calf like, hello, I'm right here. But at least we know that this calf is safe now. Just needs to start developing that situational awareness with a little more haste. Paul Rizzo, that's an excellent question and something I thought about as well. You'd like to know, is he exhausted or is he relaxed? I would say that he's relaxed. And that's because generally, if an animal is exhausted, they're not going to be expending more energy playing in the water. And he very recently played in the water. So I'd say he's just relaxed. Unlike us, we just had a little window through which to watch what was unfolding here at Tal. But for him, this calf he can turn his head from side to side, look around. Clearly he saw where his mum and sibling went. We could see the elephants on the left. So I think he's just chilled. Also remember that they're not Uh, well, they don't have to be communicating visually or staying in touch visually. They could be communicating audibly as well. And they can communicate over great distances. But hey, Paul, if you and I were here, I could easily shout to you and say, hey, over this way. And you are no elephant. So for elephants that can communicate over long distances, I think that they know what's going on. Oh, quite an impressive elephant bull coming through here. Missing one tusk. Maybe something to take note of in case we see him again. I also see a very concerned sibling on the left there. I feel like that sibling might be even more concerned over that young calf than Mum is. But Paul, yeah, I think you're right too. I think that the little guy is on an adventure. Oh, there's so much to see. So many exciting things to touch and smell and taste. Oh, this is too sweet. This is too sweet. I didn't know that rock could move. This is like kids in a playground. Just stare at each other for a while one looks very interested in being friends and the other one looks disturbed at the fact. Oh no. Okay, back to your adventure. Don't get into that sickle bush though. Stay on this side of the sickle bush. So, Mindy, you had a really interesting question. Now that we all feel much better about this elephant calf, we can get into it. You'd like to know, why do I think animals we see on drive don't register the notion that they are individuals in safari vehicles? Oh, this is really interesting. So, the theory is that animals are not able to recognize that they are different individuals in a game drive vehicle, and instead see people in the game drive vehicle and the game drive vehicle as one entity. And that's why they don't attack the vehicle or feel that the vehicle is a threat. But it's more than just that. It's also the threat or lack thereof is a big deal, particularly for animals who have been exposed to vehicles over time and have had youngsters that they could expose to vehicles, and have found that the animals that is, have found that when the vehicle's around, nothing changes. The vehicle's not attacking them, the vehicle's not taking their food, it's not a threat. So that's really important. If something doesn't affect you at all, you don't know why it's around, but it's not doing anything to you, you just kind of accept it. Imagine a rock that's following you around your whole life, but it's not doing anything to you. I suppose over time you'd forget that it's even there. But Mindy's specifically asking about recognizing individual people in a game drive vehicle. Now, I'm not sure if I believe that one, because there's been many a time when an animal has looked at me straight in the eyes in a game drive vehicle. I've experienced this with leopards, with lions, with hyenas, with elephants. They've really looked right at me. I can say, though, that I've never experienced this with an antelope. And there was a time when there were impalas really, really close to the vehicle. And they seemed to never really look me in the eye. Even though as I'm talking, they would move their heads, like, oh, the sound is coming from a specific direction. But they would never look me in the eye. And the fact that they could, I mean, leopards and lions and things could look me in the eye, made me think that maybe they can recognize that there are different entities in the vehicle. The other thing was they were able to look at me and my cam up and back at me. So that's telling me that they were able to recognize that there were two different things in the vehicle. But could it be that they can't really differentiate our body from the vehicle, so it just looks like a single animal with multiple heads? I have no idea. But I don't quite believe the seeing the vehicle as one animal. Only because I've seen that recognition from one person to another person. But could it, like I said, could it also be that it's just one animal with multiple heads? I don't know. Whatever it is, it seems to work out. And I think the biggest thing with the game drive vehicles is that it doesn't smell like food and it doesn't behave like either a predator or like prey. And I think that that is the most important thing. If it were a rock, a giant rock that was following the animals around, it would be the same thing. The rock doesn't smell like prey. It doesn't smell like food, rather. It doesn't behave like prey. It doesn't behave like a predator. So why should I be interested in it? But then I'm also thinking about patterns on animals, spots and stripes that we know are really useful in breaking up the outline of an animal. So we know that they're useful for that, which should also tell us that predators rely on being able to spot a single animal, a whole animal, to engage in the hunt. Now, we do know that within a herd, if a predator comes along, they usually will lock onto one specific individual. They won't just like run through and see what they get. They'll lock onto one specific individual. If other opportunities present themselves, they can react quickly, but in order to actually pursue, they need to lock onto one individual, which means they need to see kind of the total animal. Which is also why we know that zebras, when they're together and we have that collection of them, which we call a dazzle, it makes it very difficult for the predator to see that outline so that they can lock onto it to start pursuing in their hunt. So maybe in a way, people in a vehicle is much like a dazzle of zebra. I don't know, I'm just theorizing here. Either way, I think the most important thing is doesn't look like food, or doesn't smell like food, doesn't look like a threat, doesn't behave like a threat. And I mean, even when we're on foot, If I'm walking on my own or running and I thankfully haven't come across lions or leopards while that's been happening. But if you walk towards any other animal, um, uh, or I'd like to say those that are less potentially harmful to you, like walking towards impalas or wildebeest, they'll run away immediately. And if you think about humans and animals having, or African wildlife here, having evolved alongside each other for thousands and thousands of years, there could definitely be innate behavior or innate avoidance behavior towards humans who would have probably hunted these animals and done so in groups. So it would be something an animal wanted to avoid. And considering that humans, early humans, would have also hunted lions and leopards, it seems that being on foot and walking upright gives a clear signal that I want to get away from this thing, this potential threat. But in the vehicle, can't see you standing upright, can't see your two legs. So maybe we just create a dazzle effect. Whatever it is really, really interesting. G-Dub Quinn, you say you're happy you were here to hear about vehicles and animals. It is, it's very... I'm trying not to say the word interesting again, but it is so interesting to try and figure out why it is. Whatever it is, it works. It really, really does. And I think it works as well to think about it in your own situation. Would you be interested in something that is of no value to you and doesn't cause you any problems either? It's just there. Now, that's not to say that animals don't get irritated by the vehicle. I've seen that many times too. But then they just move away. And then you, as a good guide, would say, okay, that animal was clearly irritated, so I'm not going to follow them. Oh, this is a nice scene. This little one is still busy playing, adventuring. No, don't go into the sickle bush. Not only does that make it more difficult for us to see, but I feel like it makes it more difficult for Mum to see. I can still see that little butt and that tail. But soon it's going to move into the sickle bush. I really do hope that Mum and that sibling come along. She saw this calf, but she didn't seem to react. So clearly she thinks it's all good. Mercedes Beanie, you'd like to know if an ellie is separated or rejected from its herd, would a reserve step in? It all depends on what that reserve's policies are. If it's I'm generalizing here, but if it's an open system, so it's not a like an open system like the Kruger, Sabi Sand, Timbavati, all those areas, like that, they probably won't step in. If it is a closed system here, like Madikwe, where it's fenced and there's no elephants can't move in or out of it, then they might step in. But it also comes down to whether whether the reserve would even know. Like now, if I was driving past, I saw this Ellie on its own. If we went sitting at the camera with the information from the Zoomy as well and invested, we might think that it's abandoned. But that, to be honest, seldom happens with elephants. It's not impossible, and there are cases where it has happened, but it doesn't happen often. But ultimately, it all depends on policy. There we go. Go on, collect your baby. We've all been waiting for it. Well, that was a quick and unexpected change. The towel camera just froze for a moment there. Of course, it was just like watching some kind of movie or, I don't know, soap opera, and just at the moment where you think they're gonna reunite, it's an ad break. Anyway, we're now at the Juba camera. Just having a little look around. It's really nice to look through the tree trunk where the camera is mounted because there's often little critters in there. And they can be a great surprise. Oh, I do love Juma. Look at all this green that's starting to pop up. I also love noticing that the green pops up even before the rains because the plants have started to switch on again in a way because they're taking cues not only from moisture but also from temperature, also from moisture in the air, not just in the ground. So all these things and the amount of light as well. Plants are taking cues from these things. And so then they begin to say, hey, open the floodgates, let the sugars through. We're going to bloom again. And then what ends up happening is once those rains come, it just kind of explodes. I do love it. Juma will always feel like bush home. If you would like to experience Juma, it's one of those wonderful things that Wild Earth has started to do recently with Wild Earth Travel. But we are having a very exciting trip with Steve in February next year. We're taking about 6 people over to the Sabi Sand. Yeah, there you go. You can head over to info@wildearth.travel or just wildearth.travel and learn a little bit more, read a little bit more. You also get a free ticket to Dream, so you can sit in one of the vehicles with one of us guides that are on site at the time, but Steve will be your host. And you also get to stay at Jackie's Sabi house, which I absolutely love. Absolutely love. Such a wonderful, intimate place to be your base in the Sabi Sand. And it's very close to Juba as well. So you'll be able to visit and see all your favorite characters. And you'll be able to spend that time with Steve, which means that you also can learn some really cool things about the little things. Not just the big, hairy, and scaries. but he can teach you all about the plants, their medicinal properties. You'll get a really nice safari experience that includes so much. Head over to Wild at Travel if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that trip with Steve in Feb next year. Oh, G'd up Quinn, you say you love learning from us or hearing from us because you're in Brooklyn. Hi! And it's the only way you get to hear from guides. Well, I'm really, really glad that you are on board, and I'm really glad that you've given yourself the opportunity to just sit and enjoy, but also learn. And I think this Egyptian goose is saying to you, hey, what's up? Yep, that's exactly what's happening. Penelope, you say every waterhole episode we learn more facts, especially when there's Ellies around. I love it when we get to spend time with one particular animal and we can really get curious about them, start to ask some interesting questions, have interesting discussions. And elephants are just great for that. As is everything in the bush, but elephants we usually get to spend far more time with than the smaller animals. Well, I mean, pretty much every land animal is a smaller animal than an elephant, but you know what I mean. Instead of a fleeting sighting, we get to really enjoy, get in depth with elephants. Well, I hope I've warmed you all up and you're feeling ripe and ready. Ooh. Oh, hello, Slender Mongoose. Oh, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. Well, we have just a couple seconds left, or maybe about 30 seconds left or so. And I was saying, I hope that I've warmed you up for on safari and then the sunset safari. I hope that you have magnificent sightings, you have a great time, and remember to keep those questions and comments going because we always love to hear from you. Oh, old punkster, you say thanks so much. You love spending time with me and hearing the voice. Thank you very much. I love to spread my knowledge, but it's not just that. I love from all of you because your questions or comments, it's just the best. It triggers so many wonderful things in my brain. Anyway, it's time to say goodbye and hand you over to the rest of the team. Thanks so much, everyone, and goodbye for now.
Well, hello, welcome everyone. My name is Amy, and this is the show where we look at the highlights of our most recent game drives. This is On Safari.